John, I had just turned 28 years old when Buck Showalter became the Yankee manager in 1992. Where were you at?
I was there too, right with you, just a couple years older, covering the Yankees. It was quite an experience covering Buck at those times. I think he's loosened up quite a bit since then.
Yeah, we were young beat writers then. I don't know that we've loosened up. We're grizzled veteran columnists, podcasters now. Buck will join us to talk all things Mets. John and I will talk about best seasons we've ever seen and a very narrow playoff race. You could always listen to this podcast, but you could also see it starting Wednesday at noon on the Yes app. And I hope you always join us on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman. Welcome to the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman. This episode is presented by Tri-State Cadillac Dealers. Visit your Cadillac showroom today. John, we have to admit something when you do a podcast as opposed to write a newspaper column. It needs to be evergreen. And as we're speaking, Aaron Judge has now gone almost a week without hitting his 61st or 62nd homer. So we have to acknowledge that when you listen to this, who knows? So I want to ask a broader question that could be a little clearer for everybody is, what a great season, right? Is this the greatest season you've ever seen a baseball player have?
It is the greatest season I've ever covered. It's the greatest season I've ever seen. I mean, we've never seen a guy break a home run record and get a triple crown. Now, obviously, he has not clinched either as we do this, as you mentioned, but he is in line, on pace. And, I mean, obviously Barry Bonds had all those great seasons. In my mind, at least, I'm not really counting them. So if you throw them out, obviously we've seen Trout, we've seen Betts, we've seen some great performances. Ricky Henderson, I've been around a while. I think you'd have to go back to Carl Yastrzemski in 1967. That was before my time to say there's a season that matches this.
Yeah, I think the greatest season I ever saw, and I wonder if it's nostalgic for me, John, is Gooden in 84. He's 20 years old. He had obviously the great rookie season in 84. Now in 85, he goes 24-4 with a 1.53 ERA. And am I nostalgic for a pre-internet age where you needed to be in front of a television every 5 days to see him pitch? It really resonates with me. And I want to say this, because this is going to be loaded, so I want to be careful about greatest as opposed to most valuable. I think it's possible the greatest season I've ever seen is being enacted by Shohei Ohtani this year. We are talking about a guy who's probably going to finish in the top 5 for the AL Cy Young and have 34 homers and a nearly 900 OPS. It's happening in front of us. It feels impossible, and yet he's doing it. I don't think it's the most valuable season, but it just might be the greatest season I've ever seen.
Is it better than last year's season? I don't know.
I think the
he
bulk
hit better
pitching,
last year. He hit much better last year, right?
He hit better, but pitched worse.
Yeah.
I just think, but I mean, we're like, look, if he was 10-10 with a 4 ERA and had 22 homers, that would be remarkable.
Yeah.
He's at the top of the field at both again. I just find it. Again, I'm not belittling anything about the Judge season, which I still think is the most valuable season in the American League for a variety of reasons. But it's possible Ohtani is the greatest season I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's the most miraculous, most incredible. He's the most versatile player. Judge is pretty versatile too, but he's the most versatile. I don't think there's any question about that. I've been a critic of WAR, but in this case, I'm going to look at WAR a little bit because it's difficult to compare a guy who does pitching and hitting both. And if you look at the WAR numbers, they are 20% below Judge. So, I mean, because it's difficult to compare, I'm looking at the WAR numbers. Judge's season is better on both WARs by 20%. I'm going to stick with Judge. Obviously, the Gooden season was fantastic. I've mentioned Guidry in the past, 1978. That may be before your time. I don't know. It's not before my time as a fan.
I was 14.
We can go back to Bob Gibson.
That's
1-1-2.
a little before my time.
Yeah, I mean, I was a fan at that point. You were a baby. You've matured since then, but
barely.
I
do.
It's among the greatest seasons that we've ever seen, and one of the most great seasons of all time.
Yeah, I think that we're seeing two at one time, and we're probably going to have to split hairs about what the term most valuable is, because I think part of what makes Judge most valuable also elevates the season, which is look, the narrative is part of this. The context is part of it. He did turn down $213.5 million dollars in an extension. He had to play with that. He's been carrying the team largely all year, especially in the second half when there was so many injuries and poor performance. And just tactically, his ability to play center field. I mean, if you don't like Aaron Hicks, until Harrison Bader was ready to play, you've seen a lot of Aaron Hicks this year in center field. Judge couldn't do that, which is one of the reasons the Yankees are in first place comfortably, is because Judge did that and gave the options. But, I mean, again, I just can't ignore that we have a person pitching and hitting at the highest level when I just think about the best seasons I've ever seen.
Well, I'm going to ignore it in terms of the best because I'm looking at the WAR.
But the WAR, John, like if you look at WAR for the Cleveland Guardians, Jimenez and Steven Kwan are ahead of Jose Ramirez. There's no way those two guys are more valuable than Jose Ramirez for Cleveland. So
right.
I always take
Or
WAR.
have they been better, though? The WAR just says which is better, not more valuable, right? It's possible. Yeah. We don't see does anyone, I mean, no offense.
Right.
The Guardians are a great story. Yeah. I just started watching them a couple days ago. I mean, I was assuming they weren't going to make the playoffs. So it's possible Jimenez has been
The other teams have
better.
told us who the most valuable player is. Ramirez has been intentionally walked this year more than Aaron Judge. It's 19-18. So, like other teams,
managers aren't always right.
Yeah, I recognize that, but that would mean they're all wrong.
Well, he's a better hitter. He's a better hitter. Jimenez is an incredible defensive player.
He is. Pretty good fielder, though. Excellent base runner. I'm just saying that if you have an American League MVP vote this year, are you going to look at WAR for the Guardians and put Ramirez ahead of Kwan and Jimenez? I would think that you would. He's more valuable, and we're playing this game just when we're talking about.
Well, what's the evidence that Ohtani's better? We need some evidence that he's better.
Nobody has ever done this.
Right.
Nobody.
Well, there are a lot of things nobody's ever done. Does that make it better? I mean, it's incredible. It's amazing what he's doing. He would be second if I had that ballot, and I do not have that ballot this year.
It's not bad. Now I'm saying I think Judge is the most valuable player in the American League.
We agree.
We said, what is the greatest season we've seen? The greatest season I've seen has to now include these last 2 years by Ohtani, and it feels like he's even better this year because while he might be down 5-8% hitting, it's still spectacular, and he's in play for the Cy Young.
Right. I mean, it's an amazing season. I'd put him
amazing.
second.
It's historic.
But in terms of valuable, I don't think there's really a competition. There might be. He might get a couple.
But again,
votes.
that isn't what the conversation was at the beginning. It's like, what's the greatest?
But I would need
season?
evidence that it's the greatest. To me, I know WAR is imperfect. Lou Whitaker has
the
a higher
evidence
WAR.
is nobody else does it. Like nobody else.
Okay.
I mean, somebody actually has hit 60 homers
before.
before.
Bert Campaneris is the only one who played every single position. Does that make him the most valuable or the best?
But that's a singular event, John. I think that's apples and oranges.
There's a lot of things that
Isn't that apples and oranges, though? That's a straw man, isn't it?
There's a lot of things nobody's done that you could say, but does that make them the best? I don't know. He's amazing. He's incredible. He's miraculous. He's all of that. I agree with you.
Can I change the question? Let me change the question then.
Judge's season is better.
If you began this season and you were a general manager and I could give you Aaron Judge's season for any team, like a neutral team, not the Yankees, not the Angels, or Shohei Ohtani's season,
I would take Judge because my evidence is the WAR at this point, and he's 2 games better. So, I mean, somebody might disagree.
I would disagree.
Okay, well, you're the one.
I think I'd find more than one.
All right, let's get to the playoffs.
You want to get to the playoffs?
I think we've exhausted this argument.
I thought the argument was going well. Let's argue about the playoffs. The playoffs got expanded this year, John, to 6 teams. And we thought, wow, more teams, more competition. Nope. There's only 7 teams in both leagues who are above 500. And as we sit here today, I think the Orioles on Fangraphs have less than a 1% chance of making the playoffs with their calculation. So we're essentially locked into 6 teams there. I think they give the Brewers a 20% chance to overtake probably the Phillies. The Phillies play the rest of their games this season on the road. The Brewers are home. Is there anything to care about besides Mets, Braves for the playoffs with expanded playoffs?
Yeah, first of all, I would say that's happenstance. You know, it's unlucky this year that there aren't great races. I didn't expect better races because there are 12 teams or 6 in each league making it versus 5. It's possible it would be better. It's possible it would be not as good. Obviously, this year it's not as good. Seattle is in great position. I'm not counting them as a lock, though. If someone wants to give me those 100-to-1 odds, I'm going to take Baltimore. And I understand that Baltimore hasn't been playing great lately either. Seattle hasn't made it for more than 2 decades. That's incredible. They have one of the top 10 revenue bases in baseball. They did make all the good moves. They got Castillo. There weren't a lot of great moves at this deadline. They should be a better team, but right now Rodriguez is out. They lost what was the lead yesterday? They lost 11-run inning, right?
Against Kansas City.
Right.
Yeah. I think it was 11-2, and they ended up losing like 14-13 or something.
Right, they lost
like
by a run.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a team that has not gotten in. This may be hanging over their heads. I think there's something psychological there that Fangraphs maybe isn't figuring in. I mean, I do think Seattle will probably make it. I think Milwaukee, they're dangerous. I was just there. They had a lot of home runs. Willie Adames, terrific player, underrated player. They do have Burns. They do have relievers that can close the game. Philly, I'm a little worried about Philly. I mean, they should have won that game. They had Robertson on the mound with the lead, 84% chance to win. Threw a wild pitch, didn't close it out. I'm always worried about Philly. I'm not sure they're going to make it. Again, I would take the underdog there if you give me the odds. And Milwaukee, I wouldn't bet against them.
Well, you mentioned Seattle and Philadelphia as the vulnerable teams. They do have a commonality, which is they're the 2 teams that have gone the longest without making the playoffs. You pointed out Seattle since 2001. It's been 10 years since Philadelphia made it. Do you know who, if those 2 teams get in, you know who it becomes?
Detroit?
Detroit and the Angels have not made the playoffs since 2014.
Angels.
Yep, that's Shohei Ohtani's team.
That's your valuable guy.
No. As usual, you're miscasting what I said. Well, I'll go back and argue it again. I will say for the 19th time on this show that I think Aaron Judge is the most valuable player in the American League.
It is amazing. They have 2 of the greatest players, and they still can't
Trout's,
figure out how to get in the playoffs.
Even with missing a month, Trout's numbers. It's
He's
why
amazing.
WAR is problematic to me, especially for just look. I mean, I certainly look at it for the MVP. Trout, I think, is probably top 5 in WAR in the American League for a losing team where he missed a month.
Right.
A
losing team doesn't have anything to do with the WAR, but missing a month does hurt the WAR.
For the most valuable player.
Yeah.
That's why I try not to just look at that stat because it rates out like Byron Buxton still has a great WAR this year.
Right.
The guy never plays, and one of the reasons the Twins stink.
Well, when
he
plays great. So you can be MVP. I mean, to me, you have to lead your team to something. You can't be out of it in June and be the MVP unless you have such an all-time great. I mean, obviously, we've seen guys, Andre Dawson, A-Rod. There have been guys who've gotten the MVP from poor teams, but that's in a year where nobody else is doing very much. In this year, obviously, Judge is not only doing something, he's having one of the greatest seasons. The greatest season in my mind that I've ever seen. So, to me, the Angels are an incredible story. I know the first time we did this, we said they're going to do it this year, right?
And we beat up Seattle.
And we beat up. Well, don't count Seattle as in yet. It's not over yet.
Well, I mean, you're a numbers guy, and the numbers site says that Baltimore has less than a 1% chance.
Fangraphs is not always correct.
Well, they're not. They're rarely correct. But we use it. It's like WAR. John, our guest later in this show is Buck Showalter, so we'll do a lot of drilling down on the Mets. I wonder if we can go back to the Yankees now. Judge has obviously taken all the air out of the room as far as everything else is going on. And in fact, I think the Yankees need him to hit the home run and to win one more game so they clinch so that these kind of deals are done and they can use like as much of the last week, 10 days to get ready for the playoffs. As we sit here, they're going to be the 2nd seed. What concerns you about the New York Yankees?
Oh, a lot. I mean, they've been so up and down. They're so unpredictable. They looked like the best team in baseball for a while. Then they looked like close to not the worst. There were some really terrible teams. Close to the worst team.
Like the Angels.
Now, no, they're not the worst either. Now they look like among the best teams. Right now, the Guardians and the Astros, I guess, and the Jays look awfully good as well. But to me, I got questions about their rotation. I have questions about their bullpen. I've got questions about their lineup. To me, there's a lot of questions about the Yankees. Do they have a shot? Yeah, they certainly have a shot. I think we're at a point right now there are 4 or 5 really good teams, and then there's a gap below that. So I'm going to be surprised if one of the 5 teams that we think is really good, including the Yankees, doesn't make it. I think they have a shot, but they got to answer a lot of to me, the bullpen is the biggest question. I mean, you've written about this several times. What are they going to do in that bullpen? I mean, Chapman, they've got all these guys who've been all-star closers. Britton, Holmes, Chapman, all this talent, and they don't know who their closer is. They don't know who the setup guy is. You know, Boone's having to do mix and match. He's done well. I'm not just saying that because he was a guest last week. I think he's done well with it despite the emails that I get, but a lot of questions.
Yeah, you mentioned the Guardians. I still think this will come down to the Yankees and the Astros. Do you know since Cleveland took a 3-1 lead against the Cubs in the 2016 World Series, the AL Central is 4-22 in the playoffs and have lost 9 series.
Yeah,
this is how the Yankees advance, pretty much.
Well, that's mostly the Twins. Yeah.
It's the Twins, the White Sox, and Cleveland. They all have lost a lot of games. The one thing about the Twins is they won none of the games, whereas like the Twins, Cleveland has won 2, Chicago's won 2. Of the 4 of the 26, those are the wins.
I think Cleveland can win that first round, though.
I think they can win it. They have a very deep, talented power bullpen, which gets me to I agree with you about the Yankee bullpen.
All right, good. We agree this time.
Yes. I think when you think you have a lot of answers, you probably don't have an answer. And I think that this idea, I see what the Yankees are arcing to do. We're going to find lanes for everybody. These are the 3 guys Lou Trevino's going to get, and these are the 3 guys Wandy Peralta's going to get, and these are the 3 guys. And they've tried this before, and one of the things that happens in a playoff series is those lanes close because one of the reasons they're a lane is those hitters don't see the relievers a lot. You keep showing good hitters the same reliever, the trick goes away. And I don't see anyone in that pen as we're coming to an end where you say, like if I ask you the question today, Yankees are 3 outs away from clinching around the World Series, whatever you want. You can hand the ball to anybody. They're all rested. Cole's giving you 8 innings in a clinching game. Who are you giving the ball to?
Well, I'd give it to Marinaccio, but nobody else agrees with me, so it's not going to happen. It seemed like until a couple days ago, the answer was Holmes, but I don't know what they would even say. What do you think they would say?
I think the answer is Holmes. I think the answer should be Lois Saiga because I think that he's back close to what he was last year when he was one of the better relievers in the sport. He gets a lot of the Yankees are a really excellent defensive team. For some reason, the ball finds holes when he's on the mound. He doesn't get hit very hard. I think he's back. I think the one thing I'm pretty confident about is it won't be Aroldis Chapman, who has ended 2 of the seasons at the end of his hand. I'll just ask this big question thing: would you even put him on the postseason roster?
I think I would. I'd have to look at all the options. I'm not sure they will. I think I would. Let's give him a couple more chances and see how he does. Because, I mean, he still throws over 100 miles an hour. So I'm not giving up on him yet. They may, but I wouldn't.
I think the way the ALDS is set up, which is game 1, day off, game 2, day off, and then 3 in a row, I think they're going to take 14 position players and 12 pitches, so they could certainly get LeCastro, a pinch runner, on the team, and I think maybe get Matt Carpenter, a pinch hitter, on the team, which gets them down to 12. If you play, I'm not going to start naming every option here. If you do it, I'm not sure that Chapman could get on it. By the way, I'm not sure he gets to the finish line when they have to get, it seems they're just going to run out the clock on Miguel Castro and Albert Abreu. They have like on a 30-day rehab. They don't have to put them back on the roster, but they do have to put Peralta back on the roster for the Texas series, and I don't know that there's an easy navigation unless you want to say option one of the younger guys like Marinaccio for a few days, which feels unfair, or Schmidt. I'm not sure Chapman makes it to the finish line. I think he's a very hard guy to trust in any situation off of what we've seen in the last 2 years, to hand him the ball and say, go get it. Then again, you and I are old enough. We saw Graham Lloyd not get anyone out in 96. Helped them win the World Series in 96. We saw Damaso Marte not get anyone out during the regular season in 2009. Helped them win the World Series because stuff matters in the postseason. So do they take the stuff chance?
Yeah, I mean, it's very unpredictable. Like I said, they've been the best team. They've been close to the worst team. They could run the table. It's too many, for me at this moment, looks like too many questions for the Yankees, including this is the big question, what they do with that bullpen.
Well, for all the questions about the New York Mets and hopefully the answers, Buck Showalter will join us next on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman. Back on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman. We're so pleased. A special guest is Buck Showalter, the manager of the New York Mets, 3-time manager of the year. Buck, I think you're in play this year. I know you'll say that's a jinx, but I figured you'd wait till 2004 because you were the manager of the year in 94, 04, and 14. And you have the first place Mets this year. You'll definitely be in the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. and you're joining two people who were there at the beginning, right? When you became manager of the Yankees in 1992. I just want to frame how long ago that was. Your first game was April 7th, 1992. These was the beat writer from Newsday, John Heyman, beat writer from the New York Post, Joel Sherman. How long ago was that? The next day, Jeff McNeil was born, April 8th, 1992.
Wow. Really?
Yes. So
can we find another perspective to put that on there?
So I actually want to ask you. So look, we obviously were around you a lot when you were first a minor league manager, then a coach for the Yankees, manager of the Yankees, and manager along the way, Arizona, Texas, Baltimore, now with the Mets. Buck, my perception, tell me if I'm wrong, it just seems like you're smelling the roses better this year, that you seem to be enjoying this. Am I right about that? And did you make a conscious decision, hey, I'm in my mid-60s now, this is my fifth job, I've got a very good team, we're going for this, I want to kind of take it all in a way that maybe you couldn't in previous stops?
You know, maybe, Joel, on the good to see you and John. I just I don't consciously think like that. It may be that way, and it may come across that way, but it's kind of what every team needs. You know, you kind of try to step back and go, okay, this is a different situation. That's a different situation. You mentioned Jeff McNeil might have different needs than Francisco Lindor, and the game's about them, and you're part of a very precious commodity that the fans, want to see do well, and it's always been about the players, and that's why I didn't want to do this podcast necessarily. Anything that separates you from the players or players from each other is not good. I try to stay away from those things, but I probably am, Joel. But it's not a conscious effort. Maybe it's just we keep getting thrown in situations. I've always enjoyed what I've done a lot. People may not think, but it's never been in the public eye as much. Hey, there's some moments where you go back to the house, or you're talking with friends, or you're in your office in a private moment where you feel very comfortable letting your hair down. But the world we live in, there's just so much. I just don't think it's good for our team and organization, for the most part, to be wearing every emotion on your sleeve. But believe me, I'm as emotional as the next guy.
Buck, you've managed all over the country at this point: Arizona, Texas, Baltimore. This is your second tour back in New York. Been with both teams. You're going to be you are the second manager to get both the Mets and Yankees into the playoffs. I don't know if you know the first. I only know it because Harold texted me that Yogi Berra was the first. How is it different? Is it better, worse, different in New York than it is in those other places?
Well, I don't want to put any challenges out there media-wise, but I'll tell you this. I'm not one of those guys that's real clingy to the past. I love things in the past, but there's a lot of things that are better, John. You know that. Let's be fair. There's certain things about the game that they've improved on, should have. We've stepped on our tails some things. We all want to we forget about how tough some of that stuff was. There's a certain fraternity when you go through things with people, whether it be writers, whether it be players, coaches, that you have certain memories of stuff. We tend to forget how challenging some of the stuff was. But I think the more things change, the more they stay the same. I think you have to do the same things to win games. But New York's always had, in a lot of ways, I'm not saying it was easier to manage, but players, the day-to-day accountability, and a lot of things don't get to my plate because the atmosphere you play in takes care of it, quite frankly. And I tell guys all the time to embrace it, that, pressure is a privilege, and not everybody, you get through this and you're successful. I think that's one of the reasons why Edwin's been so good this year, Diaz, is that when you go through the tough times here and you get through it and you respond, you get a certain toughness about you that other people can't get. So I try to embrace all the good things there are. But like David Cohn said, if it's not good, they're waiting to embrace you. It's up to you. It's up to you. You control it.
Buck, as we're speaking here, you're one game up in the NL East. You obviously have some games between now and then, but you have a big series against the Braves, Hurricane Ian if it allows it in Atlanta over the weekend. I wonder if you could tell us how you plan to play the rest of the way. Will you go all out to win the division, even if that somehow you end up in second place? It might not set you up best for going right into a wild card. How do you think about this? You had this little in 95, right, where you had to figure out that last weekend whether to use David Cone and Jack McDowell, and you played all weekend without using them. How much thought have you put into how hard do I go the rest of the way here?
Are you talking about Sterling Hitchcock and Scott Kamenecki?
Yes, and Andy Pettit.
And George Steinbrenner.
Yes, oh yes. Well, we got Steve Cohn now.
Yeah. But you know what that whole thing was about? We could, at the very worst, we'd won a coin flip, and the very worst, we were playing a one-game playoff with David Cone pitching, and I just didn't feel like we could win. We could beat Seattle as good as they were unless Cone pitched 2 of those 5 games. So we kept kind of rolling the dice in the season with and David was available to pitch those last 2 games, but we ran Sterling and Scott out there, and it worked out. Not that I got anything back for it, but that didn't end too well. But actually, it ended well for a lot of people. But I know this is going to sound cliche, but you guys know me a little, and this is the truth. It's about tonight's game and Pablo Lopez. That's what it's about. If you don't think we haven't thought about that, we have talked about, those things, but every day the landscape changes on how you look at it, and you can beat yourself up silly, but we look at it, we've got a lot of different calendars, and right now it's about the Florida Marlins and one of the better pitchers in the league, and then it'll turn to Luzardo tomorrow, and then we'll let the smoke clear and see what Ian is doing. But at this point, certainly we have people that are aware of it and we're on top of it. But right now, I was texting some with Pete Alonso last night, and our guys are focused on the game tonight, and I'm proud of them for that. They've done that well all year.
Buck, just to jump in because of the similarity there, do you look at having DeGrom and Scherzer pitch as often as possible in a 5-game series like you looked at David Cone then, and will do everything possible to preserve them as the 1-2 guys? And if you'd like to tell us who number 1 would be in that, we're happy to listen to you.
So you're taking Bassett out of play?
So would you start Chris Bassett in Game 1 of Division Series over Max Scherzer and Jacob DeGrom?
I'll answer that by telling you that Carlos Carrasco is pitching against Pablo Lopez tonight. And I know you had to ask it. No, I'm not going there yet. We have a lot of information. We do know we're going to be in the playoffs. I have to admit to that. And I'm proud of everybody for that. But we've looked at it, and we're still crunching a lot of things. But it's good to have a lot of good options in our rotation to pick from. I'll leave it at that.
I think Scherzer and DeGrom are 2 of the most fascinating people in the game, beside being arguably the 2 best and most talented pitchers in the game. My personal thing would be to start Scherzer because his health situation. He's missed a few times this year because of the side. His arm seems to be in outstanding condition. Not that DeGrom isn't, but I would go Scherzer. You don't have to answer that question. But what have you learned about, now that you know them, that you didn't know before about DeGrom and about Scherzer?
John, it's funny. More than anything, this kind of verified that there are reasons why. There are reasons why, guys. I go in my office in Oakland, and Max is, on the day he pitched, Max is in there with the catcher going over every hitter by hitter. He's always looking for a kind of a private place. We all know there's not many private places there. They're so prepared and so driven, and everybody says, "Oh, they're competitive," but I don't think they really, really like to win, and they like it when the team wins on the days they don't pitch. Okay, they love winning, and I think with Jake, because he's got a taste of it, and then some things get a little sideways for whatever reason here and there. I mean, being with the Mets and having the Mets win means a lot to Jake, and I think it's kind of carried him through some challenging times this year where, geez, a step back, 2 steps forward, to get back. And they're just very win oriented. And I've had a lot of good, Chris Bassett's like that. Ty Walker's like that. Carrasco's like that. I've got a lot of guys that the only thing that they really equate whether or not they've had a good day is whether or not the Mets win a baseball game. And unfortunately, that's rare.
Buck, I'm going to make some equation here to Aaron Judge because he's so good, right? Like Aaron Judge, as we're speaking, I think has gone 6 games without a homer, and you begin to say, what's up, as if hitting a home run.
Did he hit one
He
last
did
night?
not. So we'll all...
I watched Top Gun last night with my wife. You seen that?
I didn't hear seen what?
No, I watched Top Gun last night instead of you.
I saw the original, like when you were manager of the Yankees. I saw the original.
I saw it, but I slept through it. My daughter liked it. She's 16.
Okay. I was so tired from the road trip. I fell asleep halfway through it. I got to tell you, we start playing it. And I said, hey, this is only $2.99. And about 10 minutes into it, I realized I was watching the first one. I thought they were having a flashback segment. So, then I fell asleep too. But luckily it was on tape, John. I got to go back.
Okay, good.
My wife did. Anyway.
We're going to go back to the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman from Siskel and Ebert here. Buck, I was asking the judge, Judge, hey, he didn't hit a home run in 6 games. What's going on? DeGrom had a bad last start in Oakland. Just because he doesn't have the innings build up, hasn't pitched a lot, does it raise an eyebrow of the manager, or we just have to expect, like Aaron Judge is going to go 6 games sometimes without a homer, that Jacob DeGrom is going to have a game like that every once in a while?
Joe, I think a lot of it is when he's pitching most of the time, he makes it look so easy that people just think he throws his hat and his glove out there. I don't think people realize how different a lot of places are to pitch in. I knew going into Oakland's a very unique place, and I'm going to say that in a nice way.
You didn't say that in a nice way by pointing out that you said it in a nice way.
I thought it was nice.
Yeah, it's no revelation. Everybody knows it's challenged. I love how they tell me, "Oh, we're close." Yeah, you've been saying 20 years you're close to the ballpark. 30. But I like. I feel bad for the organization because they're a very competitive organization run by a lot of good people. But where Jake's concerned, I don't think people realize how hard it is to do what he does and Max does, and he's so competitive. I just think that he really he never takes something for granted. Can you imagine the mindset that the teams that he faces every day? I mean, we've had a couple of games this year where, we go in these advanced meetings and we're going over a pitcher, and the last thing you want to do is have the players go out there and say, why are we even playing the game? We got no chance against this guy. And I've actually said, hey, by the way, we got no chance today. This guy's a lot better than us. Just go have some fun. Nobody get hurt, and we'll get after tomorrow's game. And they look at me like I've lost my mind, because sometimes we paint these guys to be unbeatable. But he made some mistakes. All those borderline pitches in the first inning probably were balls. Everybody's so quick to jump on the umpire. And it's just one of those days where it kind of snowballed on him. So in a way, I think it's a reminder to everybody, it should be, how hard it is to do what he does and how effortless he makes it look sometimes, even though it's not.
For whatever reason, I've been mostly a Yankee writer this year. I think it's just a happenstance, but I watch almost all your games on TV. I've been out to the Mets quite a bit too, but I watch most of them on TV. And one of my favorite things is the Buck hit by pitch cam. They always have the camera on you when your team is getting hit. And I know you. I'm wondering what's going, because you have set a record now. Your team has been hit the most. Is it some?
Well, we're trying to put it at an area that'll never be touched again.
Is it what's going through your mind? Is it something personal? I mean, you don't have. There are certain guys who get hit by pitch a lot. Rizzo gets hit by pitch historically a ton. I saw he tied Frank Robinson for 9th on hit by pitch. You really don't have a ton of those guys, yet you've been hit by pitch the most. You both broke the Reds' record. What are you thinking when this happens? Do you think there's something personal going on about the Mets? And how is Marte doing? Because that is a tough one. I mean, Marte was absolutely fantastic in the outfield, on the bases, hitting, the clubhouse, everything else. How's he doing? Is he going to be back to full health for the playoffs? And what do you think about it? I mean, just bad luck that you keep getting hit by pitch?
Well, first of all, Rizzo stands on top of the plate. He's got a reason.
Sure.
He carried that with him. Canna has been in the league leaders to hit by pitch every year. We knew that. That's part of his skill set, and he knows how to do it. He just turns the shoulder in. There's a certain way that guys can. Joe, what's funny about this, John? Is I've looked at all of them. Obviously, I can't tell you a single one that I thought was intentional. I mean, do they tick me off? When you get to the fourth or fifth one in a game, I ain't happy. Okay, and it's another reason why I don't look at the broadcast, and it's just not, But I do look at those things, and I go, why? I keep going to our hitting coaches. Why? I can't tell you how many breaking balls we've been hitting the foot with. I can't tell you how many grazes. I personally think that if you're wearing a piece of equipment that protrudes from your body, if it glances at equipment, I don't think you should get first base. What do you think?
I agree with that.
You're right. I think you're right.
Like a baggy jersey or something. But I worry about, I can't believe we got to this point, and Starling's the only guy that's really missed a whole lot of time with it. We've been very lucky. We had to pull Guillermo out of the game because his forearm blew up and couldn't throw the ball. But there's something going on with the baseball. There's something going on with command of pitchers. There's something going on. I don't know. You guys have to help me. I can't. I've tried real hard to figure out what it is. It's going to be something for another day. I thought a lot of it would go away when the warmer weather got here and guys got a little better grip with the rosin and the sweat, but that really hasn't been the case. And we're putting it in a position now where nobody's going to be able to touch it. I was told by Mike Puma that there's an 1889 or something record that we won't ever touch.
Now, we've all been around a long time. We didn't cover the 1889 team, Buck.
Yeah, but as far as Starling, John, he's making progress little by little. We're not at the 3-week mark yet, which is usually where they kind of give you an idea about the healing. We took some imaging. We sent him back early from Oakland. As much as Starling, I'm sure, wanted to stay in Oakland because we just thought it was a good idea. I say that tongue in cheek. For him to come on back, and sometimes it's like with a bone. You go, okay, is it healed yet? The next day or an hour later, is it healed yet? About an hour later, is it healed yet? I mean, it's just sometimes we thought just to kind of get him away from that constant, because people care, whether it be the writers or whether it be teammates or whether it be, trainers. Every once in a while, you need to kind of get away from it. It's not if, it's when, but everybody heals differently. Believe me, it's driving him crazy. He wants to be back tomorrow. And people are asking me about rehab assignments. I don't know, maybe like an hour. His rehab assignment would be about. Keep in mind that on the 28th, AAA and AA quits playing. There's no games being played.
Which is longer than it used to be, Buck. And on the subject of long, you always think about how long a season is. There's a point in this season where we're asking Buck Showalter, how are you going to get at bats for Robinson Cano? How are you going to keep Travis Jankowski on your roster? This is a long – that feels like the 1889 baseball team you were talking about. But the one issue that has kind of persisted all year for you guys is how do you get the ball to Diaz? And now we have about a week left in the season. Can you give us an idea of what you believe the bridge is to get the ball from starters to Diaz? And are Peterson and McGill huge parts of this, especially Peterson as the lefty?
Potentially. We still got some time, but I don't think you're ever going to be able to get enough time to know exactly. I do know that Adam Ottavinos very quietly had a really good year for us. Adam's been, he's pitched like the guy that Billy and we thought, being a guy from the area and kind of understand how it works, not too high, too low, real competitive. Lugo had a hiccup last day, but that was more about 5 days off. He's been solid for us. I like our bullpen. It's second or third in the league. People, we're all chasing perfection. But the bullpen's hard. But comparatively speaking, I'll take our bullpen. And we have a lot of options there, some that may pop. You guys know every year in the playoffs, somebody emerges that you don't expect necessarily because there's not a strong track record of it to emerge. Just because someone hasn't done it doesn't mean they can't do it. And it's a snowball time of the year. Right now, again, it's about Pablo Lopez and the Marlins tonight. And yeah, we've talked about that, and we're looking at different pieces and different angles to it. But maybe the setup guy is the starter. Who knows? But I like our guys. I like our bullpen. I like the job they've done for us. We've been able to pass the load around, and we're very proud that they're, from a workload, we're in a really good place.
I'm going to put, excuse me, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, Buck. I don't know if you can answer that first question that we kind of alluded to earlier, whether it'd be Scherzer or Degrom. I gave my answer. I thought it'd be Scherzer, but you have a couple other questions there. The righty DH, Ruff, obviously he's got a great history against left-handed pitching. I'm going to assume he's probably your righty DH. Maybe you'll even say that. You have Vientos as another option. And then also your pitching, your starting pitching is in really good shape, but that fourth starter, I mean, you have 5 good starters. I would kind of think it might be Walker, who's the fourth starter, but obviously Carrasco's really good too. What are your thoughts along those 3 kind of debates at this point? Is it still in discussion, or are you leaning one way? I would kind of think it's probably Ruff, but maybe the others are more debatable.
No, we'll look at it, John. We've got 8 games left, and we'll continue to look at things. Change, the landscape changes from day to day. We're going to try to put our best foot forward every day, and we got a lot of people that care. These guys are pushing to try to win this division. And as far as the starters, we've got guys who got 2 more starts. We'll take all information in, and when the smoke clears, we'll figure it out. The challenge for me and Billy and Jeremy Hefner and the staff is to make sure that we present the most versatile way to go as the season winds down. We have to leave all our options, because the landscape can change quickly as far as division, as far as wild card, as far as, there's so many things that you have to be able to, it could be a hurricane. It could be a doubleheader. You have to try to set up your rotation and your team to be able to wiggle when a curveball is thrown at you and still put your best foot forward. And as far as Darren Ruff, I wish Darren didn't care so much. It's almost like he wants something too much. And I found, much like Escobar and much like some other guys I could mention, that, like y'all said, we've talked about the skies falling sometime during the course of the season. I found that when they have a track record and you stick with them, most of the time that's rewarded. I'll answer it that way.
Well, you've won Manager of the Year just about everywhere you've been. You've done a terrific, terrific job this year. After Baltimore, you didn't manage for 3 years. You worked with Joel and myself, Joel and me, over at the MLB Network. You do a great job on TV. Now, I'm wondering, you're about my age. We're in the same range, and were you, it had been 3 years since you'd gotten a job. Were you at all surprised that you got the job here? Obviously, you've done a terrific job. Were you surprised? You're nodding, I think, or laughing. And how long do you want to keep doing this? I mean, I think everybody feels like you know more baseball than anybody as we sit here and do this. Obviously there are several managers older than you, some of them doing very well. Dusty Baker still doing very well. Terry Francona still doing very well. You've got a 3-year deal. Do you want to keep going beyond that? What do you think?
How much longer are y'all going to do it? I'll make a pact whether when you shut it down, we're all shut it down together.
Well, Buck, I've done college visits, and I've heard what the price tag is for college. I'll probably be doing it a little longer.
Yeah, our job's our job's easier too, so I can go a while. Your job is not very easy.
John, you got to buy tennis equipment, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, but anyway, I don't know. I don't think about it. I really, I don't spend a lot of time when the smoke clears at the end of every season. It's an honor. It is, and I take it day to day, and no pun intended or cliche intended. I just No, I had a great time with you guys as you were there. I mean, I don't take myself near as seriously. And these jobs, I pull for everybody that's trying to do it, and the young guys, and very lucky. But those manager year things, they give it to the team that surprised the most. Okay, and that's the epitome of it. They do. If they don't give it to a team that was supposed to win 100 and something games and does it. I tell you, one of the best jobs I was a part of, I thought, was in the '88 Fort Lauderdale Florida State League, finishing 2 games over 500 with that team that we had that year. Oh my God! But that's where I really learned to manage in '88. We added a full season A club in the Yankee chain, and they sent all the release players to me in Fort Lauderdale. And I heard it got back to me and said, "Let's see this guy win with this guy."
You're doing pretty good.
You're
doing pretty good this year, don't you think?
We've got talented players, and Billy in the front office did such a great job of adding makeup, that 6 tool, the post up tool. You look at when you add the players that Billy in the front office added, and you want them all to come back next year, that tells you that you picked some good guys. Think about it, whether it be Marte, whether it be Escobar, whether it be Canna, whether it be Scherzer. Most of the time you get through with something like that and you go, oh boy, I don't know about that one. But I was thinking about it last night, how excited you are just to have them back. So I don't know, John. I'll take a little dip test when the year's over with the oil stick and see what Billy and Steve and the players, more importantly, think. And right now we're trying to beat the Marlins tonight.
Buck, as a way to wrap up here, I'll also ask a big picture Buck Showalter question. As we're sitting here, you have the 20th most wins in Major League history, 1,648. You're 2 behind Mike Scherzer. You're going to pass into number 19. Hold your ears, I'm going to say. But in that group, the only 3 guys who haven't won a World Series are Gene Mock, Dusty Baker, and yourself. You always talk about being the last team standing. You always talk about it being a team thing. How much does Buck Showalter want to win a World Series personally, because it puts an exclamation point on a career and it perhaps catapults your career into Cooperstown?
That's a fair question. The Coopers thing, that's a joke. But anyway.
Well, I got to say that you're coming up on Jim Leland. You're coming up on Jim Leland's number of wins. He's got 1 World Series. I don't know that he's a better manager than you. He's going to end up there. So I think it's a conversation. And we could say we knew you when.
When you were making $135,000
when you were eating fried bologna sandwiches, we were there for you.
Hey, I've been to Cooperstown. I got hit in the head by Todd Ezold in Oneonta. First, we was a converted catcher, but we didn't have our catcher there yet. A guy named Layrit. And so Ezold had to catch, and they were going to put him on the mound. They warmed him up, and I went down the bullpen. Monk Meyer said, "Come on, he's loose." And I used to get in the batter's box. He hit me right here. That's why I don't hear too well this day. And I went in an ambulance over to Cooperstown Hospital. So I had to.
You've been to Cooperstown.
You got inducted into the hospital. So.
So anyway, but I don't. Those things.
The driving force of winning a World Series. You're a competitive guy, Buck.
We're rolling. Everybody's trying to get a chance to roll the dice in October, and it is. Leland told me not too long ago, just reminded me. He said, I got a ring. Jim talks. I got a ring. You know how I got it? Wild card. It's just a reminder of what a roll of dice it is. There's some advantages. We all think that by doing this, it's so important and you have to do that. I don't know. You know what? You want to make the baseball gods laugh, tell them about your plans. We're going to grind each day, starting tonight with the Marlins, and see where it takes us. But it's not, believe me, I'm very thankful for the honor it is to do this period. But as far as validation and all that type of stuff, it's about the players and it's about the fans. And I mean that. It's every day they allow you to manage them. You're looking for the buy-in, and these guys have bought in. They've never let anything separate them. They've walked away from everything that might make them pick a side, and that's really hard to do, especially in New York, because there's so many driving forces, and they stayed together through thick and thin, and have gotten a reward for it. I tell you, if it's fair, and everybody's got this tale in every clubhouse, I'm sure that's winning. But if anybody is more deserving than our guys and our players, and quite frankly, our fans, you'd have to show me, because these guys deserve to be the last team standing. We'll see.
Well, Buck, we're going to find out who the last team is standing over the next month plus. We know your team is in the postseason. Congratulations on that. And thank you so much, Buck Showalter, for joining us on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman. John, in shocking news, Buck Showalter was very entertaining and informative. Only for about 3 decades of our life, and including this afternoon. What'd you think of what he told us? What stuck out for you?
Yeah, well, he is very entertaining. I would say that. He didn't quite answer the question about who's going to start Game 1, Scherzer or Degrom. I'm still going to guess it's Scherzer. He didn't answer the question about Carrasco or Walker or Ruff or Vientos. I think it's going to be Ruff, but he is a very entertaining guy. He slipped in a lot of good wisecracks about the Oakland A's stadium and a lot of other things, but I think the most revealing thing he said at the end was he thinks that his team deserves to be the last man standing, and he loves his team.
Yeah, I actually think he kind of answered the rough question by telling us he believes in track record, and eventually track record pays off.
That's good. You listen well.
And I think that he was trying to tell us he's going to keep playing a guy who's hit lefties well in his career but hasn't yet as a Met. I'm with you. I think he's probably going to start Scherzer in Game 1. The health and knowing that he could go 1-5 is probably important to him. Of course, we're saying 1-5. They still have to win the division.
Right, we're assuming, right?
Yeah,
we're assuming.
It's only a 1-game lead as we talk. They have 3 against Atlanta, supposedly in Atlanta. There's a hurricane bearing down on Georgia as we're speaking, so we'll see what happens with that series. And I'm sure we'll be talking about it next week. When we're back on the show, a podcast from the New York Post. This episode was presented by the Tri-State Cadillac dealers. Don't forget to visit your Cadillac showroom today. They're a great sponsor. Thank you so much for Cadillac. We want to thank the people over at Yes. We're on the Yes app. That drops on Wednesday afternoon at about noon. If you want to listen to us before that, subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple and Spotify. We want to thank Jake Brown, as always, for producing the show, and all the fine people here at MCM for helping us get it on the air on the Yes app. Follow us on Twitter. John's at John Heyman. I'm at Joel Sherman 1. And, of course, listen to us on Tuesday and every Tuesday on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman.